Imagine for a second that there's a hidden switch buried deep in the machinery of the global economy. A switch that, if someone decided to flip it, could bring almost everything to a grinding halt. Well, today we're digging into a scenario where that switch got flipped. But not by a government or an army, but by the one industry that's supposed to protect global trade: insurance. So picture this. The scene our source material paints is, well, it's intense. You've got 150 massive ships, these absolute steel leviathans, carrying a fifth of the world's energy supply on their backs. And they are all just stuck, dead in the water, anchored, adrift, going nowhere. It's like a silent steel forest has just sprouted on the horizon. So what on earth could cause something on this scale? You'd think, right? A naval blockade, some huge declaration of war. But the cause our sources point to is so much quieter and maybe, just maybe, a lot more powerful. We're talking about a few paragraphs of text in a policy document, a decision made in a boardroom thousands of miles from any ocean. Okay, so to really get how we ended up here, we have to rewind to the event that the source claims lit the fuse. A military campaign with a pretty dramatic name: Operation Epic Fury. And what's just nuts is how fast this all went down. I mean, look at this. February 28th, the operation kicks off. By March 2nd, that's just 2 days later, the financial world slams on the brakes. The insurers make their move. And by March 5th, not even a week after the first strike, the entire engine of global shipping has seized up. It's staggering. Now, this is where it gets really fascinating. The source draws this perfect straight line between military action and financial consequence. Every single objective of the operation had this equal and opposite reaction in the insurance market. They wanted to dismantle naval assets. Boom, insurance coverage is totally withdrawn. They wanted to protect freedom of navigation. The irony is thick here, because that led to a 1,000% surge in costs, which made navigation literally impossible. It's this perfect storm where military force creates a financial reaction that completely backfires. And we can't forget, behind all these big numbers and strategic moves, the source points to a really devastating human cost. A reported strike on a girl's school is cited, with one account noting, and I'm quoting here, "The image of small backpacks scattered among the rubble of a razed school is a stain on the conscience of the so-called rules-based order." This was the reality on the ground that sent shockwaves through the entire global system. All right, so who has the power to do this, to just shut everything down? This brings us to the absolute heart of the crisis. Let's pull back the curtain on this small, incredibly powerful group of insurers who hold what the source calls the insurance kill switch for all of global trade. They're called the International Group of P&I Clubs. I know, it sounds like a mouthful, right? But these guys are central to everything. Think of them as a giant nonprofit co-op, but for ship owners. They all pool their money and their risk together to insure each other against, absolute disasters. And because pretty much everyone is a member, whatever they decide basically becomes the law on the high seas. And this chart, wow, it really shows you the scale of their power. This one group covers a staggering 90% of the world's ocean-going shipping. 90%. That kind of concentration means that when they decide to act together, there is no plan B. There's nowhere else for ship owners to go. And that is precisely what happened. After the strikes, 7 of these major clubs got together and pulled all war risk insurance for the Persian Gulf. And here's the crucial point. Without a single warship, without firing a single shot, they created what the source calls a de facto blockade. Because no insurance means no port will let you dock, no bank will finance your cargo. Your multi-million-dollar ship is effectively worthless. So we've got the why and the how. Now let's talk about the fallout. The economic abyss that opened up seemingly overnight. And it was bad. Even before they pulled the plug entirely, there was a massive warning shot. Premiums for war risk insurance just went vertical. It jumped from, a pretty manageable 0.1% of a ship's value to a full 1% for a single 7-day trip. That's a 5 to 10-fold increase instantly. Let's put a real number on that, because it's wild. You've got this massive crude carrier, right? It's valued at $120 million. The insurance bill for one trip, went from about $150,000 to $1.2 million bucks. That's not a business cost anymore. That's a barrier. It might as well be zero coverage. And this wasn't just a headache for some shipping tycoons. No, the collateral damage, according to the source, was just devastating for entire countries. Egypt reported a $7 billion hole in its Suez Canal revenue. That's a huge blow to their entire economy. Jordan, a key Western ally, saw its exports just fall off a cliff, down nearly 40%. So you might be asking, why such an extreme reaction? Why not just keep raising prices? Well, the source argues the insurers were dealing with a whole new level of crazy. You had hidden explosives creating this long-tail risk. A ship could literally be a ticking time bomb for months. Then you throw in GPS spoofing, ships going dark, and this growing shadow fleet of tankers operating totally outside the system. And from the insurer's point of view, the whole situation had just become fundamentally uninsurable. Now, this crisis wasn't just about money or logistics. No, it triggered what the source material describes as a massive geopolitical reset. The whole global chessboard was getting flipped over. And this is one of the wildest parts of the story. You have this thing called a blockade of conscience, led by Ansar Allah in Yemen. They basically started linking safe passage through the Red Sea to whether a ship had any connection to Israel. They told ships to broadcast, "We have no connection with Israel," on their public transponders. And just like that, you get this split, two-tiered market where your politics, not just your paperwork, determined if you could even sail. And all of this feeds into a really huge idea that the source puts forward, that we are watching the end of thalassocracy. It's a big word, but it just means a state whose power comes from ruling the waves, from naval supremacy. And what this crisis showed is that you can have the biggest navy in the world, but it's kind of useless if the seas you're patrolling are commercially toxic. And this table basically shows you the new map of the world. The old superhighways to the Suez and Hormuz, they're now considered uninsurable war zones. The long way around Africa? It's safe, but it's way too slow and expensive to be a real solution. And all of this, the source claims, is speeding up the creation of new routes, like the Northern Sea route across the Arctic, which just happens to be cheaper, faster, and, this is key, outside of direct U.S. control. This all leads to a huge central question that the source material poses. It takes this famous idea of paying any price to assure the success of liberty and flips it on its head. It asks, whose liberty are we actually defending if the price we're paying is the potential destruction of the entire global economy? And here is the final twist, the big punchline according to our source. The argument is that this attempt to maintain control through overwhelming force had the complete opposite effect. It was the catalyst that forced the rest of the world to hit the accelerator on building a new parallel system, one that isn't based on dominance, but on different ideas, like cooperation and sovereignty. In the end, it really all boils down to this one powerful judgment from the material we've been looking at. The insurance market, which is the ultimate cold-hearted arbiter of risk, it just made a calculation. And that calculation ends with a stark, unforgettable conclusion. You cannot insure an empire that refuses to stop burning.